Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty, and in this tutorial you're going to learn how to make patterns in Procreate using my Pattern Maker canvas and brush set. I keep a copy of it up in my iCloud so that I can import a fresh one each time I want to make a new pattern. All I need to do is import it and it's all there ready to go. So the basics of how this works is that instead of using a normal square repeat around the edges here, we're going to imagine rotating that square 45 degrees and then having it repeat from that angle. That's why we call it a diamond repeat. Your whole tile will still work in the same grid repeat style that you're probably used to, but it's going to have this built-in mini diamond repeat within it, almost like a half drop. The benefits of making the patterns this way is that because all the seams are inside the canvas and we can see them, it's easy to see how your motifs are going to interact with the other ones on the tile next to it. You also only have to actually illustrate these motifs here. These ones here on the outside will be made by duplicating these ones on the inside. For me, the biggest strength of this method is that you can really refine and customize your sketch layer first before you start finalizing motifs and have each motif custom made for the space you want it to fill. It feels more like intuitively drawing a picture rather than trying to fit together a jigsaw puzzle with motifs you've already drawn. So let's have a look at how this repeat actually works. Let's go into this document here. So I've got all of my motifs duplicated and then flattened down into this one layer here. And what we're going to do is put a mark going off each of the corners. It's really important that this does go all the way off the edges on those two corners. This is so that when we then duplicate this layer and tap to transform the canvas, we can grab the whole canvas, all 12 by 12 inches of it. So now we need to make sure we have magnetics and snapping turned on and both all the way up. So then what we do is to drag this layer halfway down and then halfway across. And you'll see these orange lines confirming that we've snapped it exactly halfway. And then we can do that again with the bottom layer. Duplicate it, tap to transform, and drag it up until we get those orange lines and snap it into that corner there. Then we go back to the bottom layer again, duplicate and transform, drag it across, and then do the same over here into the bottom corner, each time making sure you can see those orange lines. And what you can do is to pinch to merge these four top layers, and we'll erase those black marks in the middle now. And then go to the layer underneath and we can erase those ones we drew in the corners as well. So now you can pinch to merge those two layers together, and now you've got a seamless repeating tile. And now if we swipe down with 3 fingers to copy all, and then swipe down again to paste, and then from here we grab this and snap it into the middle. I'm going to quickly go over this part now and I will go over it in more detail later in the video. And then I'm going to duplicate and bring that down there and merge them together. And now you can see we've got this nice seamless repeating tile. And you've got a basic overview of how this diamond repeat actually works. So now I'm going to show you how I start out my sketches by first working out my sketch layer. So let's open up this one here, this blank one. And let's have a look at the layers. We'll close these textures and hide those because we'll look at those later. And then down here in the sketch group, you'll see we've got this layer called Draw Here First. This one is blank layer, nothing on it. And then underneath, we've got one with a diamond on it, which is going to help us build out our repeat in a second. So we're going to start drawing on this layer here first. And I'm going to start drawing with my Fun Sketcher brush. And basically what you want to do is just start out drawing your motif on here. I'm just going to draw in some very rough flowers on here, add in a couple of leaves, and then once you've got that first motif in place, it doesn't have to be flowers. You can use any type of motif for this pattern. You could use polka dots, you could draw clouds, you can draw absolutely anything you like. It doesn't have to be flowers. So once you've got this first motif in place, I normally, with snapping and magnetic turned off for this part, I normally move it somewhere near the top and middle of the canvas, not quite touching the edge so that I still have a bit of room for drawing up there. Then I'm going to merge it down onto my sketch diamond layer, and now that is all on the same layer as this transparent diamond. If I change the background colour to something else, you can see that's just a transparent diamond there. Let's change that back to white now. So then, to help us work out where our next motif would go, what we're going to do is duplicate this layer, and we don't need to draw in the corner marks this time because we've got this diamond on there that goes all the way to the edges. You can see it goes all the way across there, and this is what's going to help us make our repeat in our sketch layer, so we don't have to keep drawing those corner marks in all the time. So we've duplicated that. We can now put snapping and magnetics back on, and we can drag this halfway down and halfway across. We could do it in each of the corners, but because I'm just going to work on this motif here next, all I really need to know is where this one lines up on that edge. So we can go back down to our bottom sketch diamond layer, and then we can draw another motif in here, knowing we can start down there. Because we've moved this one down, we know exactly how it's going to line up with the motif next to it. So let's just quickly draw another flower and some leaves in there. And then this time I will duplicate and transform this all the way around. So let's duplicate this one and drag it into all of the corners, making sure that it's snapping into place each time. And then you can merge all of those ones above your sketch at the bottom. You can merge all of those together. Sometimes I turn the opacity down on this top layer so that I can see what I'm doing and easily know which layer is which. But I think if I do that, you're not going to be able to see it very well on the video, so we'll leave that as it is. So now we go back to this bottom sketch layer. We can now draw in the rest of our motifs. So let's start maybe down here, and let's just draw this one in and work on filling these spaces here. So we could put a leaf in there and one curving over that way. And now we will go ahead and duplicate this one all the way around. And I'll be calling this duplicating and offsetting from here on out, this process. And then once those are all around the outside, one last one to go, we can then merge all of those together. So keep repeating these steps until you have a completed sketch layer that you're happy with. If you find that you want to be able to draw off the edges of the canvas into this section here and go off the edges, that is also possible with this method. So what we're going to do is, on this bottom sketch diamond, we're going to duplicate that, tap to transform, and we're going to drag it halfway across so it snaps to the middle there. And then the layer underneath with the original one, we are going to transform and drag that over to the other side until we get those orange lines there as well. So if I hide this layer at the top there, you'll see our diamond has now turned into an X. We're going to merge those two together, and then we want to do the same with this top layer as well. So let's duplicate, drag it over to there, and then drag this one over to the other side. And then we can pinch those two top layers together. And I am going to reduce the opacity on this one so that I don't get confused here. And then on this bottom one, we can then draw in our shape to fill this little space we have here, and we can go off the edges of the corners there. So there we go, that will do for this demonstration. And so the way to get that back into the right place now, we're going to delete the top layer and we're going to do the opposite of the steps we did before. So we're going to duplicate those and drag them in the opposite direction, and we'll have our diamond shape again. And we've got this one here which we were able to draw going off the edges. So now we do a duplicate and offset in all the corners to see how that's working together. And then we can pinch those four top ones together. So now that you have your sketch all worked out, you can use this pattern group here to actually illustrate the motifs. What I normally do is I'll turn the opacity down on this middle layer, the ones that I actually need to draw, and then on this layer with the outside motifs, I might alpha lock that layer and change it to a different colour so that I can keep track of which ones I do need to draw and which ones will just be repeated. So now I'm going to go ahead and speed things up while I illustrate all the motifs on separate layers within the pattern group. This text here is just a placeholder so that you can easily place layers above it. If I didn't have this layer here with something on it, I wouldn't be able to save an empty layer above it. So that's the reason that's there. It helps you keep track of what is what, and also if you've got a pattern that you turn around or turned upside down, it's an easy reference to be able to see how to get your pattern the right way up again. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and whiz through illustrating this pattern now. So once you've got all of your motifs in your pattern group completed, you could then go ahead and add some shading. I'll show you how I use some of the shader brushes in this one. So what I quite often do is I'll set the blend mode to color burn. I've just added a layer above here and I've put a clipping mask on there, and set the blend mode to color burn, and I'll normally have it around about 40%. And then one of the brushes I like to use is this gradient texture, the large one, and I'm going to grab a grey colour, just 50% grey, by double tapping over here on the colour wheel, and then you can add some shading onto the leaves with that. And then to get a lighter colour, you can go on this layer again, add a layer above it, and that's going to also clip it to the layer. This time I'm going to set the blend mode to colour dodge, and again at 40%. And then you can use that gradient texture brush again to add some lighter colour texture coming onto the edges of the leaves. And then what I might do next is use the speckles brush and just scribble over the whole layer on both of those layers to add a little bit of noise and grit and texture onto those as well, like that. And then on the stems, I'm going to add a clipping mask on that again, and we'll set the blend mode to colour burn and bring that down to 40%. And then I'm going to grab the gradient texture small brush with this one, and I've still got that 50% grey colour, and I'm just going to add a bit of texture or shadow, whatever you want to call it, where the stem is poking out from underneath the flowers, like that. And then for the flower petals, again, we'll add a layer above. We'll choose colour burn for this one, bring the opacity down to about 40%, and clip it to the layer below it. And this time, let's use the shading crayon for this one. Let's see how big that's coming out. Yeah, I think we might want to make that a little bit bigger for this one. So yeah, I'm just going to add a bit of darker colour coming out from underneath the petals here. And the reason I like to use a blend mode and to use colour burn and grey is that I can really easily change out the colours. If I tap on this layer here, and I'm going to tap alpha lock, you can also do that by swiping with 2 fingers. Sometimes I do it that way, and sometimes I find it easier just to tap and choose alpha lock. So if we change the petals on this layer to pink, we just tap fill layer, and then we zoom in, you can see that the shading is still going to match. So we could make it orange. Let's tap and fill that. And you can see that blend mode is always going to match what is underneath. Whereas if we made that purple and then used a darker colour to do this shading rather than a blend mode, we'd have to change both colours each time. But by using blend modes, colour burn and colour dodge, you can easily change out your base colour and you aren't going to have to redo the shading every time. So let's just take this back to purple now. There we go. So I'm going to add another layer in between there. And for this one, we'll set the blend mode to colour dodge again. And we'll go in with our 50% grey. And then we'll add some lighter colour. That's quite strong. I think maybe I didn't set the layer opacity on that one. Yep, let's bring the layer opacity to 40%. And we'll just add some lighter colour on the edges of those petals there. And then we'll have a go with the sandstorm brush to see what kind of look we can get there. I might want to reduce the opacity on that one. We're still using 50% grey, and all I'm doing is just giving a little scribble over on each layer onto the colour burn layer and also onto the colour dodge layer. Let's add some darker noise texture coming in there. And then if we zoom in, you can see we've got some nice texture going on the petals there. So that just leaves the centers to go now. So let's put a clipping mask on this one, and we'll go for colour burn at 40% again. Doesn't matter if it's not exactly 40, somewhere around there is good enough. And let's try Dusty Field on this one. So we'll just add some darker colour onto the bottom right corner of these. And then we're going to add a layer in between there. Change this one to colour dodge. Set the blend mode to 40%, and on the top left corner we'll put some of this lighter colour on there. So that's how I would use some of these brushes to do my shading. So once we've done all of these motifs, and these are all completed, to draw in this one here, so we have it coming in off the edges, what we're going to do, I'm going to hide my pattern layer. I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers. I'm going to tap copy all, and then I'm going to turn this pattern layer off, and we can turn the extra layer on. I'm going to tap on the extra layer there, swipe down with 3 fingers, and I am going to paste. And that's going to paste in everything that we had on view before. So this is now like a reference layer for us. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, take it over to the side halfway, the same way we did when we sketched out this part here in the middle. We had our X in the middle like we've got there instead of a diamond. And then all we need to do now is just illustrate this motif in exactly the same way that we did for the other ones. So I'll skip through that part and catch up with you when that's done. So now I've finished this motif here, I'm going to turn off these 2 bits at the bottom, and you can see that all I've got there is just that small extra motif. So once you've illustrated everything, you've got 2 options. You could either send this over to Photoshop to put the pattern together, which is what I normally do, or if you want to stick to using Procreate, which is totally fine by the way, you can put the pattern together here too. What we want to make sure we do though is to always keep these layers intact so that we can always go back and change things later if we need to. So let's turn this pattern group on and duplicate it, and I'm going to drag it up out of my layers group here, and then I'm going to do the same with the extra group. I'm going to duplicate that and drag that up above it as well, and then we can turn this whole layers group off. If you find that you don't have enough layers to be able to duplicate all of these things, what I would suggest you do is come out into the gallery and then duplicate your whole document so that you keep one that has all your layers in it, and then you can go into the new one here. And then if you weren't able to do your duplicating in the other document, you can flatten everything in this one and you've still got that other backup version of it. So I'm going to first of all flatten my pattern layer, and I'm going to un-alpha lock that. And then in our extra layer, if you didn't already hide this reference layer and the little extra label, turn those off now, and we're also going to flatten that extra layer. So the first thing we need to do is to put this extra part back on the edges where it needs to be. So I'm going to grab a brush, and we're going to put a mark going off the edges of the corners there. So then we can duplicate this one and bring it halfway over there, snapping it into place. And on this one underneath, we can just bring that one over there to the right. And then we can pinch to merge those 2 layers together, and then I'm going to erase those little marks there. Then we can pinch to merge these 2 layers together. And that is the motif that we've illustrated, and the rest will be made up by duplicating this. So let's zoom in and add our mark up here in the corner so that we can do that duplicating. It's okay that it's nearly going all the way to the edge there. You just need to make sure that you're not drawing onto your petal, and as long as it's going off both edges there, that's going to be okay. And then when we do this one down here, we can duplicate and do our duplicate and offset with this as well. just be really careful to check that you've got those orange lines showing each time you get this, so you are definitely snapping it right into the corners and moving it exactly halfway, and that way your tile will be seamless. So then let's just zoom in there, we can pinch to merge those together, and let's grab our eraser. We just need to be careful we don't also erase that flower petal there, so let's make our eraser nice and small and erase those. And then we also need to remember to rub out the ones on the layer underneath. Just be careful. Oh, I wasn't careful enough up in that corner. Let's just erase that mark. There we go. So that is now our pattern tile all built out. The pattern maker canvas comes with this texture group at the top here. If I just turn it on, you'll see that it does this lovely magic thing and adds a gorgeous texture to all of these motifs underneath. And if we pick a different background colour, something that will make it show up a bit better, let's try this cream one. You can see we get this nice subtle texture creeping in the background as well. There's some nice marks up here. If we use something a little bit darker, let's go for this pink colour. So yeah, this texture overlay is where we get all these lovely gorgeous textures coming in. I normally work with this group turned on the whole time while I'm illustrating, so I can adjust colours as I go and know how it's going to look. So all of these textures are all 100% seamless as long as you keep it this size and don't resize them or try and make this canvas or tile any bigger or smaller. They'll all be perfectly seamless at 12 inches square, 300 dpi. And as long as you've been snapping everything perfectly each time and checking for those orange lines, your pattern tile will repeat perfectly, including these texture overlays. If you move them around or change the size of them, they won't repeat properly, so do bear that in mind. There are some adjustments you can make without affecting the repeat. If you want to unlock this, you can do things like adjusting the blend mode or opacity for each layer. So for example, this one here is on colour burn, and if we bring the opacity up, you can see it has a much stronger effect on the colours. If you want to go back to what they originally were, in the layer name for each layer, I've written a short code for the blend mode and the opacity. So this one here would be colour burn 13 and this one here overlay 43. So you've still got those there as a reference if you want to go back to what they were after playing with them. You can also change the blend mode to something different. So this one here is on overlay, and in overlay it's going to work by lightening areas, but if you wanted to try this one on colour burn to try darkening things up instead, you can do that as well. So yeah, do have a play with those settings, experiment to see which ones you like. You can even just turn some of them off, and if you don't like that paint texture, for example, you can turn that off. Yeah, you might need to go back and adjust your colours if you change any of these, but yeah, you could even just have one layer on. If you just like this grungy texture on there like that, you could just use one single layer. So yeah, do have a play with those and see what effects you want to create for yourself. You absolutely don't have to keep the exact same settings that I have. So let's now copy this whole tile here and test how the repeat is working. So I'm going to swipe down with 3 fingers to copy all of that. And then I'm going to come up here onto this top group and on my texture layer, and I'm going to swipe down again with 3 fingers and I'm going to paste. If we had pasted this underneath the texture layer, if I just drag this down, what we would actually get is a double instance of the textures. When we copied it, it copied it exactly how it looked with the textures. So if we put this underneath the textures again, those textures are going to get reapplied on top. So you want to make sure that you paste that right at the very top. So then we're going to tap to transform. We're going to grab this node down here and we're going to snap it into the middle. You should see it says 1800 and 1800 pixels there, and you'll also get your orange lines there. Then we can duplicate this layer and we're going to drag it all the way over to the right here. And again, you've got your orange lines showing that you've got it in the right place. You can pinch those 2 layers together. Zoom in just to double check that everything's looking good there. You can't see any wonky lines. Incidentally, I find that nearest neighbour is the best sampling method to use if you're moving pattern things around like this. Just a side note there. So we can duplicate this top layer now, tap to transform, and we can drag that down to the bottom. It doesn't seem to be snapping so easily. If you find that that's happening to you and you're having trouble snapping it into place, try hiding everything that you've got underneath, because if you've got things underneath, it will snap to those layers instead of the edge of the canvas. That might be what's causing the problem. So let's try duplicating that again and drag that down. There you go, that's snapping much better this time. So then we can have a quick zoom in before we merge those, just make sure there's no jagged or misaligned bits there. That's looking good. So we can now pinch those two layers together, and there we go. That is a pattern now built out. So now you know how to use your pattern maker canvas in Procreate. You can see loads more time lapses featuring this canvas and my texture brushes here in action on my YouTube channel every week. So don't forget to subscribe to see more of those. This is quite a simple pattern, so if you want to see me making much more intricate, complicated patterns using this canvas, those time lapses are a great place to start. You can find this pattern maker canvas and brush set over in my Etsy store. You will get all of these brushes here, plus this canvas PSD file with all of the textures in it. The diamond and everything is in there, set up and all ready to go. If you're one of my lovely monthly newsletter subscribers, you can get a code to get 10% off that. If you share your patterns on Instagram, don't forget to tag me so I can share them in my stories and see them. Happy pattern making, and thank you for watching.